church, at some point in the last year, you've received communion 3 times. It goes back to a day when communion was offered just once a month and not every week. And so if you received communion 3 times over the course of a year, it was presumed you were there on those 3 key Sundays and throughout the year as well. But it still stands in the canons of the church. So confirmed communicants are those who are entitled to participate in the voting life of the church. Linda Davidson has made a motion to accept the minutes, to certify the minutes of last year's meeting. Is there a second? Second by Barbara Linder. Thank you. All those in favor, which can be signified by the raising of hand. All those in favor. Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. We're making progress. A report on behalf of the nominating committee. I will invite the Honorable Stephen Linebaugh to give the report from the nominating committee.
Thank you, Father Eric. I want to first just mention the people that served on the committee. We had Susan Ariel, Daniel Blakemore, Kendall Menzer, and Ann Strayer, and me. There's quite a few people that we had for vestry and for the nominating committee, and as it turned out, this was not that difficult of a task, because one of the things that we found when we first met was the incredible number of extremely qualified, interested, dedicated members of this congregation. So for us to look at the list, everybody had quite a few names. The difficulty was to try to narrow that list down, because there were so many fantastic people. But the committee is announcing the following candidates for the 2023 vestry: Mike Dellinger, Scott Hamilton, David Kearse, Felicia Marino, Pete Partridge, and Chris Potter Klaus. And for the nominating committee, Bill Ariel and Carolyn Warman.
Stephen, could we ask those who are here to stand, whose names you just read? I know one or two who may not be here.
Okay. Mike Dellinger, Scott Hamilton, David Kearse, and Felicia Marino, Pete Partridge, he's already up, and Chris Potter Klaus, and Bill Ariel and Carolyn Warman. These are your slate of candidates.
And I can say that Bill Ariel, I believe, is at home still recovering from COVID. I spoke to Susan this week, and the symptoms were relatively mild, but that is why Bill is not able to join us today. Thank you, Stephen, for the report of the nominating committee. Are there questions to Stephen on behalf of the nominating committee? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to elect those listed on the slate on a single ballot. I see a motion by Ann Deisher. I see a second by Matt Conant. All those in favor? That works too. Any opposed? So moved. Wonderful. Thank you. And congratulations to our new vestry members in the nominating committee. Yes, please. We're also going to pull a little bit of a move from the floor here, if we may, because there is one other area for elections that we don't have currently filled. It's our diocesan convention. Every year in the fall, there's diocesan convention, which post-COVID is a combination of in-person gatherings in the Harrisburg area, Harrisburg and or Lancaster. A gathering in person, but also a component online. The last couple of years, I believe, the business meeting in particular has been held online via Zoom, with some other components being held in person. And we are requested to send up to 5 delegates to the diocesan convention. And so I will use this opportunity to ask if there are any who would be willing to be nominated as a delegate from St. John to the diocesan convention at a date we don't yet have, but it's typically around October of each year. Charlie Marino, thank you. We got one. We got one. I can just feel the pressure. Milton and Susan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That gives us 3 delegates to diocesan convention. I'll give just a moment more in case. Charlie Marino, Susan Leak, Milton Leak have offered themselves to be delegates for convention. Are you offering or? Absolutely. Well, Dorothy Kennedy is our 4th delegate for diocesan convention. I was going to let you make the motion if you wanted to, but we'll take you as well as one of our delegates. So the 4 named persons have been nominated themselves to be delegates to convention. Is there a motion? Motion by Eric Megenzer, seconded by Wanda Blakemore. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Please join me also in thanking Steve Linebaugh and the nominating committee members whom he named, but may I invite those who served in the committee to stand for just a moment so we can thank you. Thank you so much. Now, the reports and updates on our parish life. The annual meeting is a business meeting. This is the one time a year we announce, invite, gather in our sacred space to consider the institutional and spiritual life of the parish. And so we gather up a variety of different items reflected in the booklet you have in front of you. I believe as I was hitting print on this, it was 27 pages, most of which are the reports that have been submitted by the leaders of our life. Those who are clergy, staff, and volunteers, many volunteers who allow the life of St. John to be vital and vibrant in our community. And so this booklet every year represents that. It represents our parish life. What we do in this time is not simply read through each of the reports that are there. A note, we circulated this report digitally by email yesterday, and I was able to see that more than 40 clicks on the link to download it were performed, and so several dozen of you, I'm assuming here, were able to see this booklet online yesterday, and we have the hard copies available today. This is a summary of some key areas of our life over the previous year. We don't intend simply to read it in this context, but to give opportunity to be able to report back on some key areas by focusing on the spiritual life of the church, some of the key elected leadership of the vestry, and then to open it for some Q&A during this time as well, so that we are able to gather up other questions or items that may be out there. So allow me to give a very brief snapshot on spiritual life and invite my colleagues, Mother Alyssa and Yvonne, to share as well. Some of you may have been nervous when I started my sermon today that, oh, he's just going to read his report, isn't he? Because I use the same story. At the start of my sermon, as I put in this report, my letter to the parish in the opening of this manual. I will not repeat for you what I said there or here, but offer this. So much of what came to heart and mind for me as I prayerfully reflected on the previous year were all those areas of new life that we would never have imagined or guessed from a couple of years ago to where we are today, and how grateful I am for all those who have allowed that life to be possible, especially in those places we might never have imagined. And so some of that was in my heart and soul as I was writing this letter and sharing the sermon today, which means I'm so grateful to all of you for journeying through that process. St. John is just not the same community as it was a couple of years ago. I mean that in the best possible way. We, of course, live within the legacy and tradition of St. John and have seen some wonderful new life, to borrow that image, bubbling up and welling up to the surface. Notable, meaningful, powerful instances of that include Mother Alyssa and Yvonne. And so I've invited each of them to be able to give a snapshot, a summary, a couple of minutes, focusing on maybe a key item of their ministry or engagement over the past year. And so I'll invite Mother Alyssa at this time to come up and to be able to share with you.
Good morning. This time of year naturally brings reflection on the previous year for one's life. And of course, that's what we are collectively doing this morning as we gather up the graces of the past year here at St. John and look to the coming year with boldness and fidelity. I'd like to highlight 3 such graces of the past year. First, godly play. Godly play is an area where the Spirit has breathed new life here at St. John, and I mentioned some of the specifics in our report. But what cannot be conveyed is the depth of spiritual formation that is being offered to any of us who are prepping the stories or making the materials, assisting as door person, or hearing the stories, including in congregational moments like we had in December at the St. Nicholas Mass and at the Christmas Eve pageant. Godly Play takes seriously the spirituality of the child, presuming that the God who forms them in their mother's womb needs no new introduction, but simply kind and wise guides on the sides who do what all good spiritual directors do, which is set the stage and then get out of the way of the Holy Spirit. Our leaning into Godly Play is a place of hope and a sign of spiritual growth and health within our community. Secondly, things pertaining to retreats, likewise, are places where God simply can be God to people, where people whose hearts are restless until they rest in God can find the one for whom they seek, realizing that God is here all along. This past year saw some off-to-the-side spiritual growth, such as the Saturday morning that the ministry team set aside ahead of Holy Week last year so that together we might lead us through these sacred days from a place of centeredness. And again, we'll do this year on the Saturday prior to Palm Sunday. And of course, the more public Icons and Transformation retreat with artist Mila Pavlovska that gathered several members from our parish and folks across 3 counties. Setting aside time for God itself is an experience of personal growth, but I also witnessed the potential for our space to be an urban retreat place with access to this, our historic sanctuary, the modern chapel, the commons area, the private retreat room upstairs, meditation garden, labyrinth. We have a holy and sacred space, well poised, and I look forward to seeing how we can continue to use our sacred grounds to the greater glory of God. And then finally, a third grace, the sacraments, notably the Eucharist, which, according to the opening words of our prayer book, is our central form of worship. Whether gathering around our sanctuary's altar or the altar that I've heard referred to as the children's altar or our 1776 altar in the chapel or in credence tables amid the Icons and Transformation or side tables and end tables and coffee tables in people's homes, whether prayer is 1, 2, A, B, C, D, the third form, EOW 1, 2, or 3, whether in very small, ordinary services or in large services like funerals, and my ordination, which happened at the same place that I'm currently standing. We are a Eucharistic people. It is Christ who meets us in the sacrament and Christ who strengthens us for ordinary and extraordinary times. At a recent home visit, I commented that my travel corporal, that's the little white cloth that you put down first and then put the chalice and the paten on, I commented that it looked like it was perfectly made, just the right size for the little table that we were using as an altar. And the person quipped, actually, it was the table that was perfectly made for the corporal, upon which we would put ordinary items that would become for us the body and blood of Christ. This is our purpose too. It's what we're made for, to be those perfectly formed vessels on which is placed a cloth upon which our Savior comes in absolutely ordinary forms in our world. May the meanderings of the coming year likewise draw each of us and this parish collectively into deeper friendship with God and more faithful service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'll invite Yvonne as well to come forward and to share with us and to report back on his involvement and leadership in our community this year.
Good morning, everyone. It's been a great year on my end. In August, I turned one full year here at St. John's as a ministry associate. Around that time, I also took on the administrative role in the office, which was great. It allowed me to have a lot more presence here on campus, which is fruitful in many ways. As ministry associate, my role continues to be one of support for the work of Father Eric and Mother Alyssa and the various ministries that are happening at any point in time here at the parish. Duties as assigned, which is great. I continue to participate in the preaching ministry of the clergy, which is very good. Teaching, adult forums, godly play as needed. We did a pilgrimage this year, which was not well attended, but it will be hopefully in the future. It was a very fruitful, wonderful opportunity for us to go to Washington, D.C., see some spiritual sites, pray, eat together. It was really good, and hopefully we can continue that later on this year. The Epiphany home blessings, which technically occurred in 2023, were also very, very fruitful opportunities for us to visit families in their homes, and I foresee that being something that we can do in the future as well. Nourishing Soul and Body, our monthly gathering for a potluck meal, prayer, and sharing, faith sharing, we could call it, has been very, very fruitful. Well attended. We've seen some growth there, and we continue to do that with an increase of gatherings during the Lenten season. So as we head into Lent and Easter, there'll be a greater emphasis on adult formation surrounding Lent and Easter. So stay tuned for those. And as always, we keep looking for other ways that we can make the faith come alive, right? More about life, deep discipleship, as it's called, both within the parish walls and outside in our daily lives. So I continue to participate in that work and ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Let me gather up this sharing about our spiritual life by using that image we find in our history and scriptures about the body of Christ. The Apostle Paul famously uses this image of the body of Christ multiple times, but especially in his letter to those pesky Corinthians, the ones we hear him berating a bit today. He uses this language because they're simply snipping and biting and consuming each other, not realizing, Paul says, that they bring various giftings and diverse giftings to the body. We can only become the body when we have those diverse and various giftings working in harmony together. And so, in addition to Mother Alyssa and Yvonne, Rodney, of course, as our organist and choir director, is part of this ministry team, and we were going to play it by ear to see if Rodney wanted to say anything today. Rodney, what do you think? No, that's a no. Okay. So we have given opportunity, but I want to affirm as well the beauty, the grace, the gift of the various gifts that we bring to the body of Christ, and to thank Alyssa and Yvonne and Rodney and all of you for being a part of that as well. Thank you. Are there questions or comments on the spiritual life of the past year or our ministry team? Wonderful. We'll move right along then, and I will invite outgoing senior warden, Daniel Blakemore, to share with the parish as well.
Good morning, everyone, and to you as well who are hopefully viewing us on our streaming feed. The operational life of St. John's for 2022 was actually quite mild when you compare it to 2020 and 2021 when we were living through the pandemic. So we're grateful that it was a fairly mild year, and we're also grateful for the fairly mild winter when you consider the heating situation. Icons and Transformation, which Mother Alyssa mentioned, it was well received by over 300 people here in York, many of the parishioners of St. John's. And of those who had an opportunity to view the artwork, you were treated to a spectacular display of both ancient and modern iconography. I want to make it clear and take this opportunity to be forever thankful and grateful to all the volunteers, many of whom are sitting here today, who helped unpack and hang the artwork, those who served as docents. We had 18 exhibits throughout those 2-3 months. Also those who showed up on the last day to help tear down and repack. And I also have a special thank you to hand to Felicia Marino and to Susan Ariel, who co-chaired the committee, which had, I hope I don't miss anybody, Linda Hirschner, Wanda Blakemore, Morgan Hively, Tom Russell, Ann Strayer, Father Eric, and I think, and Judy Bowen. That's right, I forgot Judy Bowen. It was a wonderful effort. It was a great project. It was a huge project, looking back on it, and it uncovered some things that need to be done in the church, which my colleague, Mr. Hively, the junior warden, will bring up here in a minute or two. What to do about our heating and cooling system took us a better part of 2022. We had wanted to move away from, as you know, the boiler burned in December 2021, and it's a gas-fired heating device, and we wanted steam, and we wanted to move away from gas-fired steam. And we also recognized that the air conditioning system was on its last leg as well. I should have taken a recording of that to remind everybody, but we purposely had to manually control it during this church service so that we could hear what was going on the pulpit. The decision was made after many months of working with various heating and cooling system engineers and some members of the vestry, and we went forward with a new cooling heating system utilizing a heat pump, and there'll be air handlers on the floors that will eliminate the radiators, and Morgan will have more of that in his report. But I'd like to take the opportunity to call out and thank Jim Gleba for his tremendous support in helping the vestry and those of us that were pursuing the answer to this question through that process. Last year, I announced to you about a non-binding letter of interest that was sent to John McElligott, who had a plan in front of the Redevelopment Authority in New York. That particular project was declined by the RDA, so therefore that non-binding letter for the development of our parking lot is null and void, and there's nothing else to talk about development on the parking lot. That's not to say that somewhere down the road somebody's not going to come knocking on our door and want to talk to us about putting a building over there, but for the time being, that's behind us. Speaking of the parking lot, I want to remind you, I made an announcement in Two Advocates, and many of you have responded to me already via email and by phone. Effective February 1st, Brocky is implementing a new revenue collection service, which is done via smartphone app. They will not be taking cash or checks or having any manual transaction done. It'll all be done over the smartphone app. The system was going to eliminate not only the need for cash, but it's also going to help him with enforcement of who's parking on the lot. There's a lot of people park there throughout the day, and the parking lot attendants don't always catch those people, and he's entitled to generate as much revenue off of that as he can when he has the normal business hours Monday through Friday. So this new system also provides for a vehicle plate recognition system. So the monitor can merely go through the parking lot, scan the vehicle plates, and if your plate number is in the database, you're waived from any fees. So that's why I ask everybody, whether you come to St. John's during normal business hours of Monday through Friday, to give me your plate number. We'll get it into the system, and then that one occasion when you didn't think you would have and you came to St. John's and you walked out there and found a boot on your car, that you could avoid that inconvenience. The normal hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. That's when the parking lot will be active. Other than that, it's inactive, and you can park on it at any time. So the parish of St. John still gets to enjoy the benefits of free parking on that lot going forward in time. Any questions on that parking lot? I know that I've fielded a couple questions since the advocate went out, but does anybody have any questions or comments regarding that? Okay, good. I've had good response, as I said, thus far, so continue to feed the information to me, and I will get back to each and every one of you via email to confirm that I got your information and it's been entered in the system. This, by far, a bit of an emotional meeting for me because this is my last meeting as senior warden, and I'm coming off the vestry as well. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Father Eric for letting me hang out with him for 4 years as his senior warden. That wasn't expected when I agreed to be senior warden while Father Doug was still here. But it's been a blessing to me. I also want to thank all of you. It's been an honor to serve you as senior warden and be on the vestry. It's been a spiritual enlightenment for me to be able to get closer to my church family and get to know everybody real well. And I thank you all for that. If there are no further questions.
Thank you, Daniel. It is I and we who owe you an unpayable debt of gratitude. When I arrived at St. John in March of 2019, I discovered that the senior warden I'd be working with was relatively new to the parish himself within some handful of years. And I quickly came to realize how grateful I was. Daniel has brought to this role just an incomparable combination of business and practical savvy, along with a real hunger for spiritual depth and growth. Those two things don't always go together. And that's okay. We all have our journeys that we're on. But I couldn't have come up with a better profile for anyone that I might want to work with, especially as he and I both together were simply doing our best to faithfully live into this season of life and ministry at St. John. Among the many gifts that Daniel has brought to the position is a capacity and willingness to simply ask questions that might go under the radar screen, or people might assume, or if you've been here for a lot of years, you wouldn't think to ask. Daniel just simply would raise his hand and ask, why are we doing this, or what about that, in the most helpful fashion, right? He would ask those questions and also call us back to the heartbeat and the plumb line for our identity. And so Daniel, COVID threw us a curveball. We had some more time added to the term and some things that weren't planned for. But I'm so grateful, Daniel, and look forward to giving you a personal thanks with an adult beverage and an icon of St. John that we can give you for the journey going forward. Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Morgan, please share with us.
Good morning, everyone. As you can see when you walk around our campus, there have been some improvements. There's places that need to be improved, and we're working on it. And I just kind of wanted to give you an update as to where we stand, that hopefully, considering everything, we should have our heating system in effect by the end of February. Tomorrow morning, the workers are coming in to take the registers out and start putting new registers into 4 areas in the sanctuary here. Most of the electrical work is already run, so it's just a matter of hooking it up. So within a couple of weeks, we should have everything up and running. Once that's accomplished, as you can see, the walls look a little bare, look a little dirty. We have a painting contractor already set up to come in. He will start painting the walls. Once the construction is done, there's no sense doing any work until everything's taken care of as far as tearing and replacing registers. So the painting will be done, and that's going to start as soon as the new registers are in and the heating and the air conditioning is up and running. Also, a lot of brickwork has to be still done on our church. On the alley side, we have mortar missing from the bricks. We have a moisture problem. We're solving that. We have that contracted to have that taken care of in the spring. They will be coming in to seal the brick and replace the mortar and replace any bricks that are deteriorated over the years. So we are moving forward. There's an awful lot of work. It's an awfully old church that needs to be tenderly taken care of, and it takes time to deal with the problems we encounter. it's not an easy fix sometimes. Sometimes it just takes a lot longer to take care of certain things. I know we like to see it all done at one time, but it's not going to happen that way. We just keep piecing our way through. But any suggestions, any problems you see in this, please come forward to me and let me know exactly what it is, and I will either answer your questions or we will try to come up with a solution to the problem. And I just want to thank everyone, because we had a busy year this year with the icons in town, and with the work that we did have done on the memorial wall and the handicap door system. There was a lot going on here, and I'm grateful for everyone having the patience to wait until it got done, and I'm certainly thankful for it. And there's always a good group of people that stand up and want to be counted and jump in to help, and it's forever, it's always grateful. So I just want to thank everyone here for the help that they do give us. Thank you very much.
Morgan, thank you. I think it's safe to say that in the course of the vestry meeting, Morgan tends to get teased a bit for always asking for money at the vestry meetings, because Morgan, par excellence, is one who keeps an eye out on all the moving parts of our property. Things like mortar that people just don't walk around staring at. Morgan will be able to help us monitor and keep an eye on. And all those projects he just rattled off, as we have different layers of projects happening right now, the HVAC system, there's the painting that we talked about. Each of these are significant for the shape and life of the church. And just to let folks know, of course, none of them are cheap. The HVAC system, as a reminder for those who may have been a part of the conversation or are new to the conversation, is a combination of insurance funding that we received and also the property maintenance reserve, which is the fruit of good savings to make sure the property has a cushion to handle unexpected surprises and hits that come our way. So a combination of insurance money from the failed boiler and savings that we had online. The painting that will happen in here is the fruit of the Icons exhibit. There were revenues that were generated from a wildly successful invitation to our community, welcoming people in, hosting the Icons. And the painting that will happen, stay tuned, it'll be within the month after the HVAC system is done. From the transept here, in other words, from the walls, ceiling down, the walls from these stained glass windows and these stained glass windows through the end of the middle part of the nave, which counts as the blue stained glass windows in the center right there, the Nativity series, the Easter series over here, we'll be able to paint what looks like that kind of creamy white, linen, cream, take your pick, that runs to the end of the stained glass windows here will all be color matched and refreshed, cleaned, and painted, all paid for by the Icons exhibit and the good work that people did with that. As those of us who are up here can hear, I'm not sure if you can hear as well, there's all kinds of feedback and chatter and stutter and some clicking that's happening right about behind Liz, I think. That's happening on one of our monitors behind the root screen right here, which leads me to one other property project that has not been part of this report, but some are aware of. We've begun what will be a series of improvements to the audiovisual system at St. John as well. These are all currently funded by private donations. So in addition to other projects that we have, savings that have been accrued, there are still private donations that allow for other needs that come up that we really need for the life of worship and community here at St. John. So in the back corner of the nave over here, behind Mike and Jess Dellinger, in that back corner there where the rocking chair is, you'll notice there's been a table and some gear back there. We have this week the finishing touches to phase one of what will be a multiple phase improvement to our audiovisual system. The rack that we have behind the organ is being improved. It will go away, right? I'm looking at Tom Warman. It's being pared down. We have components that are 20, 30 years old, some of them, that are just past their useful life, and some of them not even up to the technical standards that can be improved or built upon these days. And so, thanks to some private donations, we will finish at the end of this week, stage one, which is going to replace some of the components, some receiver components that we have, also rewire some of the infrastructure of our system, giving us a direct pipeline to our audiovisual camera, which will improve the sound that we're able to produce in our worship services. We have received regular feedback from those who do join us online, those who look to be able to be a part of our community if they can't be here physically, to join us in our worship. And there have been stretches where we are just at our wits' end. If I had hair, I would pull it out, but I don't, and so I can't. But where we haven't changed anything, and we've gone from having beautiful crystal clear sound to sound quality that just makes the video unwatchable because it's so patchwork. And so the improvements that we're doing in phase 1 are rebuilding the infrastructure, rewiring some of the infrastructure, and setting us up for a future known as front of house station, which from this perspective is the back of the church. Front of house station that will allow us to monitor in real time what's happening here in house and also online with a much improved system. Our, not just wingman, our point person for this project has been Tom Warman. So I want to thank Tom for shepherding us through this project as well. Please join me in thanking Tom. Also, be patient with us. We will not be able to replace all the speakers at once. We will not be able to upgrade all the components at once, but this is a very meaningful first step, which we expect to stabilize and improve the experience internally simply because of the infrastructure work that's happening. And also, if you'd like to know about future opportunities to support audiovisual improvements at St. John, I'd love to talk with you. Having no questions for Morgan either, I'll invite Dave to share with us about the financial life of the parish.
Good morning, everybody. From a financial perspective, 2022 was a very good year for St. John's. We had a year-end operating cash surplus of nearly $49,000 due to parish generosity and a great financial management team. This was the third year in a row that we ended with a year-end cash surplus. That cumulative surplus plus our insurance payout, as Father Eric mentioned, enabled us to fully fund our new HVAC system. We have achieved our 2023 stewardship goals. The vestry approved a balanced 2023 operating budget, and that would make the sixth one in a row that's been balanced. This budget included both a staff pay raise and an annual bonus, which has been lacking somewhat in recent years. In the past 5.5 years since we've had a mortgage, we've paid off about $900,000 over a $2.4 million mortgage. Our funds to pay for the mortgage will run out in 2026. And the vestry's had some discussions about this over the past year, and the vestry will be evaluating capital programs to address this shortcoming in the next year. Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay.
Dave routinely gets the award for being the most punctual in his reports at vestry. Dave Hogeman is also stepping down in his role as treasurer, having served for 13 years as the treasurer of St. John. So we are so grateful that Dave's institutional knowledge is not leaving us. But Dave has more than earned the privilege of stepping down from the financial life at St. John, having really stewarded and shepherded St. John's financial life through significant projects, some uncertainties, and helping us find some stable footing as best we can for the road ahead. Please, please, join me in thanking Dave. Dave, I believe you'll be spending more of your time at coin collectors conventions and other antique items that you support. Yes, okay, good. If you come across any great deals we should invest in, let us know. I joke. But that's a great segue to invite Liz. Liz Wright will come forward to share with us about the finance and investments of St. John.
Good morning. As you can expect, most of the time that our committee spent in 2022 was working on how to handle our investments given the turmoil in both the bond and the stock market. We had approved the sale of $100,000 out of the bond funds in December of 2021, which we actually had done in January. We met again in April and approved selling another $100,000 in bond funds. As Dave just reminded us, our mortgage payments total $183,000 a year. And we will be meeting again next month to look at which funds to reduce or liquidate to make the payments in 2023. Our investments totaled $803,000 as of the end of the year, of which $625,000 is in the property fund. Our investments remain conservatively invested as the property fund is the money we are using to fund the mortgage payments over the coming year. As of year-end last year, 36% of investments are in stock funds, with the balance in cash and bond funds, most of which are in short-term bond funds. The portfolio decreased by 24% during the year, but that includes the money we took out to make the mortgage payments. If you add back in those dispersed funds, that would indicate a loss of about 8% for the year. We were fortunate when you consider that our two largest bond funds lost less than 6% a year, and our largest stock fund lost less than 1%, one half of 1%. This compares with the U.S. domestic bond market losing 13% for the year and the S&P losing 19%. The majority of our bond funds are invested with Vanguard, which offers the lowest annual fees, and the same is true for our largest stock fund. All the funds we have are rated gold or silver by Morningstar. Per the revised 2020 investment policy, there are 9 tests that we conduct twice a year on the portfolio, and the portfolio passed all tests both times. As Dave also mentioned, as of last December, the church will run out of money to make the mortgage payments in August of 2026. And to give you an example, that compares with last year at this time. We thought we had enough money to make payments through November of 2026, but because of the decrease in the investment funds, we lost 3 months of payment. So we are going to be looking at needing to do something and start to talk about it soon. And that is my report.
So when it's time to figure out something soon, I get to talk. So, no, I'm joking. In case finance isn't your primary language, Liz, would it be safe to say that the previous year, the year we've just gone through, where the market had so much turmoil, is exactly why we have the portfolio balance that we do? Because those percentages you listed meant that when the market was just troughing out, we were still pretty stable. We were still pretty stable because we need those funds for our mortgage and our commitments. And the reason we're able to have that stability is because of the great oversight of Liz in the Finance Committee. So please join me in thanking Liz and the Finance Committee as well. Those are the primary reports that we've planned for today. So let me invite, if there's new topics, we'll get to that in just a moment, but are there questions for any of the reports right now? The question is, what would the approximate balance of the mortgage be when our current funds are depleted? So about 1.2 million would be the balance when our funds run out, having begun at 2.4, roughly? Yeah, 2.4. So by that August date of 2026, without any changes, the funds we have right now would reduce the current balance of around 1.8 down to about 1.2, and we'd be left with 1.2. Assuming no big gifts come in. I love it. This is not a sales job. Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you, Bill. Other questions? Yes, Karen. Rodney, the question was, would it be fair to say this? Is your question, what is the state of the organ, or is there something specific you had in mind? Understood. Just wanted to clarify. Yes. But I believe the question, Karen, thank you, is the state or condition of the organ, because as you know, organs are not cheap either, and they're a significant part of our parish.
Well, I tried to get out of speaking. Yes, there's a problem with the organist too. The organ is about my age. And so I am struggling too. So, as you know, pipe organs are very expensive, and they keep. There's a lot of maintenance that goes along with them to keep them going for so long. And as many churches have found out, they didn't do anything for many, 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 many years, and then they get a bill for $250,000 and they can't keep it up. So a lot of churches have really stopped using their organs, but we've been lucky here that we keep the maintenance going on, so I appreciate it very much. The next project that we will have to address is the solid state system of the organ. The solid state system is the electronic component that keeps everything going. It's the operation. It's where I sit around. That's the real organ. Most people point over there. The organ is actually over here where I sit, and that controls everything. And the solid state system is just gone. So we struggle with it and do the best we can with it. So that's the main issue. As we have already addressed some of the pipes that needed, they were bent, and if you look in there, they are beautiful, and they're not going to collapse as they were going to. So that just has to be done. I know the estimate we had before was maybe around 50,000. It's already gone up 10% in the few years because of the prices of everything else. So it's just one of those things that needs to be addressed. They will have to completely change the solid state system. Most of it is in the console where I sit, and some of it is in the chamber. So that is the next big thing, and that is all of the maintenance I think we have to do for a while, and then anything else is just whatever. But we really do need the solid state system to be completed at some point, because it's going to fail. It's getting there. So that is that report. Thank you.
St. John has, yes, please. And one of the things you just discovered there, if you didn't already, is how hands-on and aware Rodney is of the instruments and the resources that we depend on for music to happen here at St. John. He does so much to maintain, manage, and keep them up for us. So part of what was revealed right there was you don't have to scratch the surface much or pull too many strings to realize that a church with the age, the stature, and the size of St. John, there's always something that is potentially a little bit nerve-wracking, just beneath the surface a little bit right there. And God is gracious, and God has been good, and St. John continues to find new life as we move into the future. Thank you, Karen, for the question, and Rodney for the report. Other questions? These are helpful. Yes, Kendall. Yes, as you have your jacket on. Thank you. Thank you very much. So questions, as I understood them, were, what is the expected impact for our ongoing budget in terms of efficiency, or what we might expect to see in terms of the usage? And the second one? Thank you very much. Yes, environmentally friendly. 100% more environmentally friendly. Oh, I'm stretching a little bit, Jim, because you know better than I do. But Jim, give me a thumbs up if we are moving in the right environmental direction with our new HVAC system. I can say this. So for those who may not know, the air conditioning big blowers, the air handling units, were up in the balcony behind these little lancets up there. And the ones that have replaced them are maybe a third the size of what was there before. Is that fair to say? Maybe a third the size. We expect them to be exponentially quieter in terms of the work they're producing. Now, what has yet to be installed is what Morgan was saying before, one of you was saying before, about the floor registers, of which there are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are yet to be installed, and they will generate some noise as well. But after some good sound decibel research by Daniel and his iPhone app, we are very excited to expect a really significant reduction in the noise level of this. So yes, environmentally more efficient, and sound levels reduced. In terms of ongoing bills, we expect that to also be reduced, although it's not that. Our heat system, as I understand it, which is a water steam system that we have here historically, both heating and air conditioning will be air movement systems, forced air systems that we have going forward. That will be different than the heating experience St. John has known with its current system. As long as Jim keeps nodding his head, I'll keep talking. Don't try it for a sermon, though. It doesn't work for a sermon. So one thing that will not be the case in terms of the environment that we experience with heat in the wintertime is that when that steam system reaches temperature, it's just like a warm blanket that sits there and is comfortable without much variation. When there's the movement of air, even if the heat is consistent, you can feel the movement of the air. And to some, that might raise some questions about whether it's working the way we expect it to work. It is, and we will set temperature. We'll have a learning curve that goes along with that. But one of the real values Jim prepped us for as we were discerning which direction to move in, and he wasn't pushing us one way or another. One of the areas Jim helped us discern was just that. It will feel a bit different to move from a steam environment where the heat is just there, so to speak, and where it's being pushed through the space. Fair enough? Okay. Yeah, and we're looking for some bills to go down too. Hopefully. Thank you. Other questions? Seeing no other questions, let me offer a blessing and I will invite a motion to adjourn before we finish. May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face to shine upon us, that God's way may be known upon earth, and God's saving power among all people. O God, you are to be blessed and praised. All good things come from you. You are in our words and in our thoughts and in all that we do. Amen. Having completed the business of the church, is there a motion to adjourn? I heard and saw Tom Warman as the first, and Wanda I saw as the second. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Thank you all.
You go to